Who's more radical, the left or the right? Uh, Kind of depends on what you mean by radical. There are radical elements on both sides that are pretty radical, but let's see what Prager U has to say. So, Prager U, take it away.
There are crazy positions on the far left and crazy positions on the far right. On the left, there are people who believe a man can get pregnant, that the world
No, because trans women aren't men, they're women. So, women can get pregnant.
is going to end in a decade if we don't cap.
No, it's not that the world is going to end in a decade. It's that we have a decade left to stop the runaway greenhouse effect, which is going to cause catastrophic environmental changes. As far as I'm aware, no one is out here doom saying that we have a decade left on this planet. um, no, I'm sorry. You're right. My mistake, OT Marty. Trans men can get pregnant. So yes, men can get pregnant. I apologize. I misspoke and misunderstood what he was saying there. Yes, men can get pregnant. Trans men are men. You're right. I'm sorry, OT Marty. Um, but the issue is we need to do something to curb global warming, or we're not going to be able to do anything, and we're going to have to deal with a massive climate catastrophe.
Carbon emissions, that the real purpose of the American Revolution was to preserve slavery.
What? 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 I have been a history fan my entire life. I've read fairly extensively about the American Revolution and the Civil War. One of those was about preserving slavery, and one of those was about obtaining liberty. No reputable person has ever said that the real purpose of what? This is absurd.
On the right, there are people who deny the Holocaust happened, who believe that white.
All right, let me update the stream info real quick. Okay. Yeah, people on the right deny the Holocaust all the time. That's pretty common.
Whites are.
You might want to rethink that next, SVK. Talk about Noam Chomsky. Um, Christopher Hitchens was pretty radical in some ways. And there's even some reputable radical people on the right. So, yeah, there's. Yeah, Noam Chomsky confirmed non radical. Whites are
inherently superior to other races.
Yeah, that is a position taken by many people on the right.
That no one should pay taxes. But there's an important difference between these two extremes. The crazies on the right have no voice. They are shunned. They live most.
What the hell is the name of Trump's advisor who's a fucking white nationalist? He looks like someone straight out of Nuremberg. Oh, God, why can't I never remember this asshole's name? Come on, Chad, help me out here. Oh, God, you know who I'm talking about? Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller. No, Holocaust denier and whites being inherently superior has no voice on the right. No. They only invite, why are names so fucking hard? Candace Owens. They only invited her to speak to Congress twice. What? Okay.
mostly on the far fringes of the internet. The crazies on the left have a loud voice. They are celebrated. They live in the halls of Congress, in state legislatures, and in governors' mansions.
Again, this is where uh, Prager U conflates people on, excuse me, conflates the beliefs of people on the far left with just Democrats. And whatever the opposite of conflation is, the far right, like America First, Nick Fuentes types of people in the White House, even though the people like Stephen Miller have much more in common with uh, people like Nick Fuentes than Nancy Pelosi has with like me or fucking Noam Chomsky or what have you.
In light of this distinction, it might be interesting to ask ourselves this question. Which group, the left,
The crazies on the right have no platform, says dude on Prager fucking you. True. Yeah, exactly, Dodge.
or the right is more radical? We can arrive at a common sense answer by posing this thought experiment. What would America look like if the left got everything it wanted, and what would America look like if the right got
Uh, for the answer to the first question, insert that Simpsons gif of Lionel Hutz, everyone dancing around in circles. Yeah.
everything it wanted? Let's start with the left. Taxes would go up on individuals and corporations to pay for more social programs.
Good.
Everything from universal childcare to free college tuition.
Yes.
Many on the left
See, this is one thing that I see a lot of conservatives do. They talk about how your taxes will go up and you'll get so that they can pay for all this stuff. And they don't mention that that means that you don't have to pay for all this stuff. Yes, I would pay 70% taxes if it meant that I didn't have to pay for schooling at all. If I didn't have to pay for medical care at all. If I knew that my taxes were going to make sure that people on unemployment were getting a living, getting paid a living amount. Like, I guess I'm the crazy one here, but I think that if we have such a wealthy nation, that we should use that wealth to help everybody and not just the handful of people at the top who, through accident of birth or meeting people or what have you, manage to succeed.
call for income taxes as high as 70%.
Nancy Pelosi is hot. Well, the platforms are a joke mostly. I guess that's somewhat more true now, but I mean, Nick Fuentes is still pretty big. And TPUSA gets shouted out by like officials in Congress and shit. So a few bad apples. Civility police don't fund schools. Prager U isn't bad. Chomsky isn't radical. How much tax do I pay? Are you asking me, OT Marty? Because I'm unemployed right now. I don't pay any tax. But when I was working, I was paying like 20 to 30%. I didn't actually figure the exact amount out, but it was whatever, $25,000 a year pays. I don't know. Dude, Chomsky's a fucking radical anarchist, dude. You don't know that about Chomsky next SVK, then I mean the dude has been at least somewhat subtly agitating for anarchism for the last 50 goddamn years.
Private health insurance would be abolished. The government would provide all healthcare services. Everyone
Yes. Like what happens in most other developed countries, or at least the government at least pays for it.
in the medical field, from doctors, nurses, and administrators, would be government employees. Americans would pay for this government health care.
What I love about this, what I love about when people try to pull this, like, they would just be government employees. Bitch, every person I know dreams of a fucking government job. Because it's guaranteed good income, good benefits, and and it's hard to lose it unless you really fuck up. Like, I'm no fan of the government in general, but government jobs are pretty fucking cushy. I'm I'm 32, OT Marty. I'm not a kid.
much higher taxes. Illegal immigration would be decriminalized. It would still be illegal to enter the country without proper documentation, but no one who made it into the U.S. would be prosecuted for doing so.
Good.
Legal
Yeah,
immigrants would
this is
also
all
receive free
base.
healthcare, free education,
Yeah.
and free housing. The Green New Deal would be adopted. Hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidies for wind and solar power would be added to the federal budget. Drilling
I love this when conservatives think that they have an argument simply by stating their opponent's position, and I'm just over here like, yeah, do it all, baby. Keep it coming, yeah. Let people in, cool, give them free healthcare, all that. Yeah, wind and solar power, fuck yeah. And oil subsidies, yeah, fuck it.
for fossil fuels, the current source of 80% of our energy, would be sharply curtailed or eliminated altogether. So would nuclear power. As a result, consumers' electric bills would be much higher. Reparations would be paid for the past injustice of slavery. How it would be paid and exactly to whom is not clear. Legally acquiring
What? How it would be paid? Okay, yeah, it's not clear now because we're still in the maybe we should do more reparations stage of the argument. But maybe we could come up with that as time went on. Maybe, just maybe.
a gun would become much more difficult. College debt would be canceled.
I love this when they conflate leftist ideas like open borders and free housing and whatnot with liberal ideas like no guns. Like leftists want you to keep your guns. We don't we want people to be educated about them. I've actually considered if someone were to come up to me, some lunatic crazy person were to come up to me and say, "Okay, Pope Jupiter, we're putting you in charge of solving the gun crime problem. How would you do it?" And what I would recommend, and I don't know if there's studies on this, but it seems better than what we're doing. Instead of all these legislations uh, that try to prevent people from legally obtaining a gun and just force them to go to the black market. First of all, better mental health programs, so we can catch people with antisocial behavior issues before they become an issue, before they become a potential harm. And I would introduce a compulsory gun safety program in grade school. This would include not only learning how to properly and safely handle firearms, but also range time. Because one of the big issues, I think, as someone who grew up around guns, that a lot of people have is that they only encounter guns in one of two ways. One is in movies, TV shows, and video games, where guns are basically arbiters of justice and goodwill. They only harm the bad guys, or if they harm the good guys, it's a minor issue, and they can just shake it off. Or they encounter them in news programs where they're used to senselessly slaughter innocent people. And I think if more people were more familiar with guns, more familiar with them as the tools they are, that a gun is no more or less dangerous than the person wielding it, that I think we would have a much healthier relationship with guns. And I know there's a lot of libs out there who would get incensed at the idea of children learning about guns. You got to get them early, folks. You got to get them young. Because by the time they're in high school, by the time they're adults, they've already got these prejudices ingrained into them, and it's much harder to teach them. Get them while they're young, while they're old enough to learn and be safe, but maybe grade school is too young. I'm not a teacher. Like I said, this is a lunatic coming up and asking me for my solution. But this would be my proposal, and I would listen to experts and data on when the best time to introduce this would be. But certainly no later than what I refer to as middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, something like that. Young enough to learn, old enough to be responsible, to be reasonable about it. I'm down, Dodge. Absolutely. Second one is kind of a joke, completely archaic and needs to be revised. Don't need to learn guns about. I mean, I completely disagree, next SVK. So, one of the big reasons why I have this position is because we are not going to uproot gun culture in America. This is a solution for America. Gun culture in America is so deeply ingrained that it would take generations of constant effort to try to uproot it. So I say, why fight human nature? Why fight American nature? Embrace it. Make it so that everyone is shot a gun. Everyone knows what guns are like. Everyone knows how to properly handle one. Everyone knows. Don't point at something you don't point a gun at something you're not afraid to lose. Don't mess around with a gun if it's loaded, and treat every gun as if it's loaded until you've checked it. Never put your finger on the trigger unless you're willing to pull the trigger. Like, these are basic rules that were hammered into me as a kid that I think that other kids could have hammered into them through an official lesson in school, and we would see a significant drop in gun crimes, because a lot of deaths from guns, yes, a lot of them are from gangs and crime in that respect, but also a lot of crimes are from kids finding a loaded gun and playing around with it and accidentally hurting themselves or others. That would be changed if we taught people, first of all, if you have young children in the house, lock up your damn guns. But more importantly, if we start teaching from a young age, treat guns as if they're loaded. Thank you, OT Marty. Yeah. Why not? Why is it necessary for people? Why is it unnecessary for people to be able to buy fully automatic firearms? The only reason why it's a bad meme now is because people are terrified of firearms. They think they are evil wands of death.
Those who had already paid for college would get nothing. Transgender women, biologically.
There's two kinds of people in the world. Those who go through something and are like, I want to make sure no one ever has to go through that again. And those who suffer through something and say, well, I had to suffer, so do you. One of those people is empathetic, the other is an asshole.
Biological men who identify as women would be allowed to compete against women in sports.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very complex issue, but from what I understand, the majority of organizations say as long as they sincerely identify as the gender they're competing as and they've been on hormones for a certain amount of time, usually a year or two, there's no real significant difference at that point between a cis woman and a trans woman. So yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah.
America's military budget would be slashed by 25 to 50%.
Yeah. given that our budget is bigger than the next, what, 12 or 15 uh, nations combined, most of which are actually our allies, yeah, we could tend to spend, um, we could spend a heck of a lot less on the military and still maintain our global dominance militarily. Like, a lot of the money that gets spent each year on a lot of the military spending is on things the military doesn't want, like airplanes and tanks that they have no need for. Any one of our, how many aircraft carriers do we have? Like 12? There are 44 active aircraft carriers in the world, operated by 14 navies. Has 11 large nuclear powered fleet carriers. So, yeah. So, America has 11. There's 44 in the world. America has 11, any one of which is capable of winning a war with just about any other nation on Earth. So, from a military standpoint, we are already, and it doesn't cost that much to maintain our military as it is. Why would a person need a full auto weapon? Okay, maybe they're a gun enthusiast. In that case, let them buy more dangerous weapons if they pass. Yeah. No, I think you're thinking that I want to make it so that anyone can just walk in and buy guns, and that's not the case at all. I want people to, similar to buying a car, you need to prove competency. So if you, now I know this is kind of odd as an anarchist because there are issues with the government deciding who can have guns or not. But obviously, with everything else he's talking about, we're talking about a much more leftist and egalitarian government here. But I think that we could easily get a system in place where you need some sort of license or what have you to possess different classes of firearms. But things like a hunting rifle or a handgun, I think that should just require a basic competency that everyone obtains by going through the class I proposed earlier.
Speech codes would be enforced throughout American life. And that's just a partial list. Now let's
What speech codes? This is going into the Bill C-16 compelled speech bullshit.
ask what would happen if the right got what it wanted. Income taxes would be cut. Capital gains taxes would be cut. Corporate taxes would be cut. And those
Oh, good. So the government has no money to operate to do anything. Awesome.
cuts would be made permanent. All regulations that make doing business unnecessarily difficult and don't protect public health would be repealed. The issue of abortion would be sent back to the states for each state to decide its own abortion.
I love this. Notice how all but a handful of states ban abortion in this theory, but it's supposed to be a states' rights issue.
Rules for itself.
States' rights have always been a dog whistle, by the way.
Many more charter schools would be opened, and it would become much easier to fire bad teachers. In order
So a lot of mass shooters did so with non-automatic weapons. Yeah, this video is pretty bad, Lethal. With non-automatic weapons or with weapons that were modified aftermarket to be full auto. There are, even before the advent of bump stocks, there were ways of modifying the internals of rifles to let them fire in burst or full auto mode. So even if they were obtained legally, they were illegally modified or just not full auto. So,
in order to vote, citizens would need to present a valid ID.
and frankly, I'm more scared of someone with a shotgun coming into a school or what have you than someone with a rifle, full auto or not. As we like to joke in my RPGs, rifles send bullets out addressed to people, whereas shotguns are addressed to whom it may concern.
The border with Mexico would be secured. The only way to enter the United States would be through designated border crossings.
Secured. Yeah, this is just bullshit, feel good propaganda that has no. Yeah, we're done here. This is fucking dumb.
In order to qualify for welfare assistance, you would have to prove you could not work. The healthcare system would be open to free market reforms.
Yeah, it's just the same stupid fucking right-wing bullshit we've been hearing for fucking years. Whatever. Prager U is so full of shit. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.